Hello and welcome back to Retro Tech HQ. Now in our last video we took a look at some Atari 8-bit games that I've got fond memories of. But in today's video I thought it would be fun to take a look at some games that are in my collection but I've got absolutely no recollection of whatsoever. Let's find out why 9-year-old me has blocked these ones out and erased them from my memory. Okay, so first up we've got a game called Monkey Magic by Alternative Software. Now is it just me, or is this case design a bit trippy? A monkey with a crown, some random eyes and what I think are peaches. Do monkeys even eat peaches? And it gets even weirder as you read the story on the cassette inlay. You are the Monkey King and have been summoned by their all-powerful Buddha to travel to India and collect some scriptures. But first you've got to collect all of the magic fruits on the tree. Well, that clears that up then. And what I'd like to know is, if you're supposed to be a Monkey King, why does the main character look like a lanky hippie? Secondly, since when did monkeys find it so difficult to jump and grab ropes, climb ladders, move faster than a snout or do anything remotely monkey-esque? This game really is that bad. I could only play it for 10 minutes before it went back in the box, which means that over the last 30 years it's been played for a total of 20 minutes and isn't likely to get played any time again soon. So next up we've got a game called Daylight Robbery. Now according to the cassette inlay there's a totally automatic banknote printer that needs stealing, but to do that we'll need to get past the robot guards and booby traps. Now if Homer Simpson went on Slim Fast and then had a love child with Hannibal Lecter, he'd look something like this. And I appreciate that they didn't have many pixels to work with, but come on, must do better. And in all honesty, taking the mickey out of the main character is the most fun I had with this game. It's a slow, clunky attempt at a platform and just isn't that much fun. In fact, I found myself dying a lot in this one. You can see what they were trying to do. The conveyor belt floors sort of work, but the overly floaty jump mechanic and other quirks make this one frustrating. So that's another one that's going back in the box and isn't likely to see the light of day for another 30 years, by which point I would have forgotten how awful it is all over again. Next up we've got a game called Panic from Atlantis Software. Now in this one you've apparently got all the excitement of the great arcade classic, but what arcade classic is that then? I don't remember an arcade game called Panic. Do you? My memory isn't what it used to be though. One too many English owls. This one looks a bit better than the last couple of games and it certainly runs smooth enough. In fact it reminds me of a Lode Runner. You essentially have to dig holes to trap your enemies and then fill the holes in again to kill them. But unlike Lode Runner, which has got almost perfectly paced gameplay, in Panic I just found myself standing in one spot waiting for the enemies to come to me. And that's because there's no need to collect treasure like there is in Lode Runner, and this in turn forces you to make your way out onto the map. So this one's not absolutely awful, but you're better off playing Lode Runner if you like this sort of thing. Moving on, and we've got a game called Transmuter. This one was released by Codemasters, so I had high hopes for this one, but those hopes didn't last long. Now if there's one thing we're accustomed to on the Atari 8-bits, it's smooth scrolling. I mean it's not like it's a ZX Spectrum or something basic like that. Only kidding, I love the Speckies. But seriously, what's with the choppy scrolling in this one? I think it was actually a ZX Spectrum game originally. Maybe the developers, or in this case developer, had problems porting the code over to the Atari 8-bit. And I even checked out the ZX Spectrum version on YouTube. Even that looks like it's got smoother scrolling. Not something I ever thought I'd hear myself saying. The Specky version also looks a lot more detailed. Under these technical issues there might even be a decent game, but I found them too off-putting. Why would I spend time playing this when I've got better shooters on the Atari that run perfectly? Next up is a game called Cops and Robbers from Atlantis. In this game you play as Lightfingers Lonergan and your objective is to rob Acme Diamonds. Isn't that who Roadrunner had problems with? Didn't Acme make explosions that were always backfiring? But back to the game. The first thing that shocked me about this one is that I could shoot the cops, but then it occurred to me this happens a lot in modern games like GTA. So then I was shocked that I was shocked and a bit confused with it. Now where did I put my medication? Anyway, I found myself getting a bit addicted to this one. You've got to avoid the cops, make your way into Acme Diamonds, steal the diamonds and avoid Roadrunner, I mean the cops. But what I like most about this game is that when you get caught by the cops your character gets sent to jail, but you can break your character out on your next go and free yourself. I got very distracted trying to do this. Next up we've got Bomb Fusion from Mastertronic. In this one the terrorists have been at it again and have planted bombs throughout the Cellar nuclear plant. Hold up, that sounds a bit dodgy. Cellar sounds a lot like Sellafield. Isn't that the place that kept having incidents? Anyway, it took me a while to figure out what was going on in this one. To start with I was avoiding the lit bombs, but it turns out the idea is to get to each lit bomb before the timer at the bottom of the screen runs out. But what I don't understand is what the smaller white balls are for, and they're not mentioned in the instructions either, which doesn't help. Maybe this is why 9-year-old me gave up on this one. if I don't understand what's going on today, I had no chance back in 1989, but I suspect that there's a decent game hidden here. I just haven't figured out what it is. Okay, so before we can talk about this next game, I first need to figure out how to pronounce it. Is it Amarote? Or is it Amarote? Is it Amarote? Yeah, we'll go with that. Now in this one, you found yourself alone in a city infested with killer insects. Luckily, you're an officer in the Royal Army of Amarote and have access to the Arachnus 4 armoured car. Phew, that's okay, we should be fine then. But there's just one problem with the Arachnus 4 armoured car. They fitted it with bouncing bombs, not machine guns or something else suitable for shooting massive insects. Nope, bouncing bombs, which means it's very difficult to hit the insects. So I found myself running backwards a lot, trying to find enough of a gap between me and the insects so that I could then try and hit them with a bouncing bomb. This seems like a real shame to me. We're trying to hit giant insects, not bridges in World War II. So why the bouncing bombs? Some guns that fire in a straight line would have made this a lot more fun. Maybe the weapons get better later in the game. Let me know if that's the case and I might have another go at it. On a positive note, it's very impressive from a technical perspective with nicely detailed graphics and an isometric viewpoint. Interestingly, the Atari Spectrum and Amstrad versions all had the 3D isometric view, but they ditched this on the Commodore 64 and instead made it an overhead 2D game, which got absolutely slated. Now most of you will probably have completely forgotten about Clumsy Colin, the KP Skips mascot back in the day. I certainly know I'd forgotten about Colin until I dug this one out of the box. Sorry Colin. And because this game is based on a snack food, I wasn't expecting this one to be much good, but I was actually pleasantly surprised. It's not half bad. You play as Clumsy Colin and have got to navigate the map looking for items you've managed to drop, so it feels a lot like a very early open world game. Sure, it's not GTA, but it gives a nice sense of freedom. But if you're like me and find yourself getting distracted in open world games, you'll probably find yourself going completely off mission. I mean, you could spend your time looking for the stuff you're supposed to look for, or you could do what I did. Find the tallest building in the game and try and ride your bike up it. And lastly today we've got Starquake by Bubble Bust Software, and in this one a biologically operated being, or blob as it's abbreviated to in the instructions, is given the job of rebuilding the core of a planet that's about to go kaboomph. Yes, kaboomph. That's what it says in the instructions anyway. But then they also say, Gosharooties, will Blob succeed or will the universe go blip? Gosharooties? Really? I know we had some weird slang back in the 80s, but I don't remember this one. It obviously wasn't groovy or cool enough for me to remember. But after that bad attempt at an 80s joke, let's talk about the game. To start with, I spent a while trying to figure out how to jump, as all I seemed to do was drop. But I soon figured out that scattered around the levels are what look like hoverboards. And once you've collected one of these, you can fly around the screen in all directions, and then this game then turns into a shooter stroke collect 'em up. It's a decent game, with nice graphics and decent sound effects. But I'm guessing this is another one that was just a tad too complicated for a young me, but it's worth checking out as an adult if you haven't played it. And that brings us to the end of the games in today's video. I hope they've triggered a few memories, and as always, if you've enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up button and consider subscribing to the channel. I'll be back with another video soon. Bye for now.